The survivors endured valiantly but were soon slaughtered by a horde of bloodletters that had taken up positions atop the basilica's walls. The Bloodtide only abated with the arrival of the Grey Knight's fourth brotherhood on Van Horne. Turning their blades upon the surviving battle sisters, the Grey Knights sated their blades in the innocent blood, effectively turning their weapons and armour into talismans of purity. The Grey Knights were then shielded from spiritual infection by the gore-tide of the Bloodtide and were able to make their way into the heart of the cursed basilica. So that is where this famous image comes from. The horrifying murder of battle sisters by Grey Knights who were on the same side, fighting the same enemy. The 5th edition Grey Knights Codex was written by Matt Ward, who was known for having things just take a bit of an extreme tone. Space Marines are super powerful, the Ultramarines are the best, no doubt, at least in the codexes that Matt Ward wrote. And to stop this fan anger towards certain authors, they've begun removing who it was that wrote the codexes, so you can't blame one particular person. Which is kind of good. Kind of. It would be nice that the authors actually got credit for their work. But the violence towards Battle Sisters, particularly in this edition, the 5th edition, bordered on the comic and the graphic. The Bloodtide incident didn't make Demon players happy, it didn't make Grey Knights fans happy, and it didn't make the very few Sisters fans happy at all. Collectively, this was considered too far, and was later retconned. But how did we get to this point where this kind of thing happening is standard for Battle Sister lore? First, we need to remember that the Sisters of Battle are a parody of the already extreme Catholic martyr saints. They are a Joan of archetypes. Here's some examples. Saint Tuamus of Brittany went to Wales to spread Catholicism, but the locals of the village cut off his hands and feet and dragged him through the streets as a pet. He was killed and his body used to fertilize the fields, but on the next year, the crops were bad and hundreds of faithless people died. Tuamus was made a saint. The delay was due to figuring out if he was killed for spreading Catholicism or just for being French in Wales. He is the patron saint of arthritis. Saint Julian, the Hospitaller, brutally murdered his parents and then travelled to Rome where he set up a hostel. He became the patron saint of murderers. Saint Rita, or Rika, is the saint of impossible feats. At age 12, she lived in a quiet village but was forced to marry young. Her husband was murdered and she prayed to God to slay the killers and they died of dysentery. At age 30, she wanted to become a nun, but because she was not a virgin, she could only join if she completed a challenge. Rita did, and in the convent went on to perform a lot of miracles. She is the patron saint of abuse and impossible causes. As long as there is a chance higher than 0, she could perform a miracle. Only one of those 3 saints is made up. And if you're an anime fan and you know the visual novel Higurashi no Naka Korani, the saint that sounds like they're from that brutal anime is one saint that is true in Catholic canon. So this is our base level. Then to make it a parody, you have to go even further. And that's where we get the Catholic warrior space nuns. First, we're going to look at the 2nd edition lore for the Battle Sisters when they first came out in 1997, and then we'll go a bit further through the editions until we get out the other side towards the more recent lore for the Battle Sisters, and you can see how it goes, and we'll look at why it is that way. So we still get martyrdom in 2nd edition. The most famous battle report for the Battle Sisters is the massacre at Sanctuary 101. This mission was designed to be a martyrdom for the sisters. The mission is there where the sisters have to hold off the Necron raiders to buy enough time for aid to be called. It's a really fun mission. And that was all based on a 2nd edition battle report. The sisters were expected to die in that, if not lose. They did both. But that isn't the standard for Battle Sisters in 2nd edition. That's just the most famous example. An exception to the rule that would later become the rule. The Battle Sisters in the artwork of the 2nd edition codex are very active. There is no artwork that I could find of them sitting and praying. They are warriors. They're always screaming and shooting and doing cool battlefield things. So here's an awesome image of a Battle Sister. That is the standard. That is what they are represented as at this time. The sisters have immense power of faith. So, reading from the Holy Book, the 2nd edition Codex, a sign of the sisters' strength is the fact that in their entire history, only a single sister, Miriel Sabathiel, has fallen to the lure of chaos. How Miriel fell is unknown, only that she was turned from the Emperor's light to Slaanesh worship, and now serves as one of the Prince of Chaos's greatest warriors. There we go. It is a fact. We are not getting Battle Sisters turning and being corrupted and going blood mad or anything. No, not now. 2nd edition, they are amazing. About that time, the lore and the Black Library novels have almost been about mind-controlling sisters. So the Demonifuge graphic novel has a sister controlled by Slaanesh. In Kane's Last Stand, the novel, some sisters were under demonic mind control, but when they are freed, they immediately ended their own lives out of shame. So it is possible for sisters to be under the control of chaos, but the 2nd edition lore puts them firmly on the loyal to the end side. And this is an edition where we're just establishing a lot more of how Chaos Marines come from Space Marines, and there's quite a lot of Chaos Marines. Looking again in the 2nd edition Battle Sisters Codex, Saint Praxedes. She was the canoness in charge of the Order of Our Martyred Lady at the start of the Second Tyrannic War. She leads a counterattack, she kills a hive tyrant, she helps thousands of refugees flee, and then goes further. She leads her army on a guerrilla war against the armies of the hive mind, she breaks the siege of a spaceport, and even as the last of the shuttles leave, she's there continuing to fight. And the reason her death is never stated, even though she's canonically meant to be a martyr, is so you can use her in games of 40k. You would have to proxy in a battle sister with a maul, but then you can have the Scepter of Vengeance. So yes, that can kill a hive tyrant. For 6th edition, the lore around Saint Praxedes was changed so that she was fighting a hive tyrant, took a mortal wound, and then just managed to slay the hive tyrant. There is no leading the guerrilla war strikes against various parts of the Tyranids, and the idea that she's still fighting is put more of a, yeah, you know, some claim she may still be alive. But that's because there's been no model or rules for her since 2nd edition. And it's this lack of support for the Battle Sisters that has led to their lore being so messed up. In the later editions, the Sisters of Battle had less support from Games Workshop. There were very few Sisters of Battle players, which is kind of what happens when you release a new codex for them, and then very shortly after, make it invalid, which happened when the 3rd edition was released shortly after the 2nd edition Battle Sister Codex. Their 3rd edition codex removed the word Sisters of Battle completely, and they took a backseat in their own codex, including in the artwork. This is the Witch Hunters Codex with a lot of information about the Inquisition, and a small amount is related to the Battle Sisters. There was occasional rule support, but no proper codex between the 3rd edition until partway through the 8th edition of 40k. So with a smaller fan base, meaning fewer players are there to offend, killing sisters is a way to make another faction look cool. The Battle Sisters are considered somewhere between Imperial Guard and Space Marines. They have the toughness of an Imperial Guardsman, but the armor of a Space Marine. So saying, my faction didn't just wipe out a regiment of guard, that kind of thing happens every day in every war zone. No, my faction slaughtered Sisters of Battle. And that works better for what Games Workshop considered the active player base. If Ghazghkull showed off how amazing he was by wiping out the entirety of the Ultramarines chapter, that may upset some people. Remember that in 40k, they're trying to sell models to lots of different people. No one is buying all the models for all the factions. They'll have dedicated fans for particular ones. Say you really love Battle Sisters and Genestealer Cult, that means you're more likely to be watching my channel right now. But no faction is ever allowed to win in 40k. No faction will ever truly lose either. You have a warp rift appear across the galaxy, well now you have 1 million more Primaris Space Marines coming from reserve. But the Battle Sisters just got stomped on again and again. The Order of Our Martyred Lady was absolutely crushed on Armageddon, while all the other Imperial forces do okay. I know you can think, well Captain Tycho died, he died a hero though. He didn't just get stomped, and he was a character invented to die. His death was written at the same time as his existence. It wasn't a long-time beloved character who just got changed to be dying in this particular war zone. Fully half the order of our martyred lady was destroyed. Quoting, "With each successive wave of orc attacks, the sisters were continually pushed back, until finally they found themselves with their backs to the great armoured doors of their sanctorum. It was there that the battle sisters made their heroic but futile stand against the encroaching orc hordes." So for this time period, they now die with their martyrdom being utterly pointless. And it isn't the first time that Armageddon and Sister Slaughter has been put together. After the first War of Armageddon, where the Grey Knights, oh yeah, it's them again, they banished Angron for what was the first time. Now he gets banished every other week, so making that far less important. The Space Wolves weren't happy that the Grey Knights were killing the local population who had witnessed demons, and they got into a fight with the Inquisition. But it's not the Grey Knights that go to deliver punishment, it was the Battle Sisters. And over Fenris, the scale of the massacre inflicted on the Adepta Sororitas and the Inquisition is so embarrassing that the orders don't talk about it. So they died against Space Wolves for a bit of a laugh. There are a lot of other examples, but I don't think I need to go through every codex and campaign book and supplement book. The point has been made. In the 8th edition onwards, now that the sisters are supported, have new models, and have their first physical codex, their lore has gotten better and is not as extreme as involving outright failure as sisters choose to die on a rock instead of doing something sensible. Otherwise, the parody version of them as, "Oh look, a stick, I will martyr myself on this stick," was kind of reflected in the lore. So we have an improved version of what happened at Armageddon. Page 19 of the 8th edition codex. On Armageddon, the sisters amassed to defend the sanctorum of St. Catherine against the orc hordes. Though fully half their number were martyred, they inflicted such casualties on the enemy that vital greenskin forces were drawn away from other battlefronts, the sheer grit of the sisters enticing orcs from far and wide to join the siege. Countless Imperial battlefields were saved because of the sisters. So that is much improved. At this point, we haven't yet reached a monster follows girl into alleyway, battle sister walks out of the alleyway with monster head, but we have a much more positive spin on the martyrdom. Now in the Battle Sisters Codex, we're getting Battle Sister support. They do cool things even when they lose. So here's a fun story from the Sacred Rose. An orc rock crashes on the world of Typhus 1, where the Order of the Sacred Rose maintains an isolated sanctuary outpost. The Greenskins quickly overwhelm the planet's defenders, but a score of Battle Sisters barricade themselves in the sanctuary crypt. They pray to the Emperor, and a massive solar flare engulfs the planet. Every last orc is incinerated, while the entombed Battle Sisters remained unharmed. Perhaps what happened there was they completed their Gambit card. Something I know that not a lot of people have used in 10th edition. And those Battle Sisters are not martyrs, they are still alive. And what we get now is a better version of the Grey Knight massacre story. Soon after, contact with the world's Adepta Sororitas garrison at the Basilica of St. Meriel was lost, and when the Grey Knights arrived, they discovered all of the Battle Sisters had been slain. The Grey Knights' 4th Brotherhood was eventually able to cleanse the planet of demons. So we're no longer becoming headwear. So that is a brief summary of the lore changes for the Sisters of Battle and the reasons behind it. If you want to make your own order of Battle Sisters that specialise in monster slaying in alleyways, do it. And you can also check out what the minor orders of the Sisters of Battle have to offer. Have a better day with Sisters Lore.